morning. Today we are continuing with our unit. We're stepping up from doing an expression. Our last objective was working with our expressions. Now PO39 is I can solve an equation with addition or subtraction. So now we're working with equations. And I'm going to tell you, every time I teach kids how to work with equations, I show people how to set it up in a very specific, organized way. And I always have friends that say, oh, I can do this in my head. And I can just write down an answer because I can do it in my head. And I say, oh, friends, we might be able to do it in our head, but I'm teaching you the organizational way of doing this. So when we get to more complicated, and we will get to way more complicated equations, we need to know the organized way to solve it, or we will be lost. So even if you look at these equations and say, I can do it in my head, do not. Solve it the way that I show you. And I've been teaching this kind of math for a while now. I know the mistakes that students make. Work it out the way I show you. So when we get to the more complicated, you can follow the same steps and be able to get the correct answer. So, big kid math. We are working with algebra. When you hear the word algebra, most people think about solving for a variable. We've got those letters mixed in there. There's so much more to it than that, but variables are a big part of it. Here are 3 ways you might think about how to solve a basic equation. And you're going to use the method that works for you. So I'm showing different ways to solve it, and I want you to use the way that works for you. So logic, what number? So if we have n plus 12 equals 19, we have to solve it for n. We have to figure out what n means. So for logic, we're going to say which number plus 12 equals 19? 7. Okay, so we know 7 plus 12 equals 19. Opposite operations, and we've worked with opposite operations. So the opposite of adding 12 is subtracting 12. Subtracting 12 from both sides of the equal sign will get the variable by itself. So this is what that looks like. N plus 12 equals 19. We want to get the n alone. This is the higher level math. Up here, it was a simple math. We could say, okay, 7 plus 12 equals 19. Got it. I know that way. Okay, that's the simple, easy math. I said sometimes you'll look at it and just be able to do that mental math and know the answer. This is the more complicated way. It's still easy, and it'll help us with our steps when we get to the harder method. So if we're going to do opposite operations, we want n by itself. So we're going to subtract the 12 away because 12 minus 12 is 0. And whatever we do to one side of the equation, we do to the other. Just like when we're working with those fractions and ratios, whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. Whatever you do to the top, you do to the bottom, right? If we're doing equivalent fractions, equivalent ratios, whatever you do to one, you do to the other. Same thing here. If I subtract 12 from this side of the equal sign, I need to subtract 12 from this side. 19 minus 12 gives me that same answer of 7. So the logic we could do in our head quite easy. But the opposite operations, we need to know the steps because math will get more complicated. It's not going to be, oh, I can do mental math with this. Big kid math is not all about mental math. It's about knowing the steps that you're doing to get to the answer. So the other way of doing it is knowing your fact families. N plus 12 equals 19 is the same as 12 plus n equals 19. Or doing the opposite with our subtracting. 19 minus 12 equals n. 19 minus n equals 12. If we look at our fact families, that 19 minus 12 equals n, when n is by itself, that's telling us which one is the most helpful, because we want n alone. So we know n equals 19 minus 12. Just like up here, n equals 19 minus 12. And technically up here, you were doing it in your head. You just logically knew 19 minus 12 was 7, so 7 plus 12 equals 19. So let's scroll up. Using all three methods on this page, from above, you're going to solve the variable in the equation. Show how you can check your answer to make sure you are correct. So we want our answer for all three ways to equal each other. So our first way, if we're going to use logic, I would ask the question, what number plus 14 equals 25? So I'd be asking that question. Before we said what number plus 12 equals 19, now it's what number plus 14 equals 25. So that's the first way, using that logic. Okay, these are ones that we could do that mental math with. So what would the answer be? What number plus 14 equals 25? 11. So now let's do our next way. Let's do the opposite operations. To do opposite operations, we're going to write our equation out again. So that's our equation. What do I have to do my opposite operations? What do you think, Bennett?
You do 14 minus 14, and then 25 minus 14.
I want to get n by itself. I have a positive 14 here. So I want to subtract 14, and I'm going to do the same thing to both sides. 14 minus 14 is 0. So I'm left with just n equals 25 minus 14. I get my 11. So I get the same answer. N equals 11. Now, my third step was my fact families. So if I have 14 plus n equals 25, how would I write that? Which one of my fact families would help me answer what n is? Jillian?
19 minus 12.
Well, using
sorry.
this.
25 minus 14.
Yeah, 25 minus 14 equals n. 25 minus 14 is 11. So we get that same answer with the logic, with the opposite operations, and with the fact families. Again, I'm telling you, the opposite operations is the one that we are going to be focusing more on in later objectives. So we want to make sure we understand opposite operations. Let's look at our next one. N minus 16 equals 4. How would I solve that logically? What sentence am I asking? What question am I asking, James?
A number minus 16 equals 4.
So what number minus 16 equals 4? And what is my answer? What number minus 16 equals 4? Got it? So 12 minus 16 equals 4?
Oh, no, it would be negative.
Yeah, we don't want it to be negative. We want it to be a positive 4. So what number minus 16 gives us the answer 4. Okay? 14 minus 16 equals 4. 12 minus 16 equals a positive 4. 80. 20. 20 minus 16 equals positive 4. Sometimes that logic isn't quite so easy. So be careful if you're going to do that mental math. That's where we make those easy mistakes. It's that easy. That's why I said we really want to make sure we understand our opposite operations, because it's super easy to make simple mistakes when we're doing that mental math. So let's look at our opposite operations. I'm going to rewrite my equation, n minus 16 equals 4. How would I solve this? James?
We do like, oh wait.
Remember, opposite operations. So what operation am I going to do the opposite of? If I want n by itself.
The 20, no, 16.
So it's minus 16 right now. What is the opposite operation? What's opposite of subtracting?
Adding.
Adding. So I'm going to add. How much am I going to add?
10 plus 16.
So I have n minus 16. The opposite would be plus 16. Minus 16 is a negative 16. Negative 16 plus 16 gives me that 0. I want to get to a 0 when I'm adding or subtracting, because I want n by itself. So if I added 16 on the left, I need to add 16 on the right. 4 plus 16 gives me that 20. So if it's minus 16, think of it as negative 16. Negative 16 plus 16 equals out to be 0. And that's what I want. I want it to be a 0, so n is by itself. N plus 0 is still n. Now we're going to do our fact family. So if we want it to equal n, we would do 4 plus 16. 4 plus 16, just like we had up here. 4 plus 16 equals my n of 20. Let's try one more. N minus 14 equals 71. What is that logic question that I'm asking? Ziki. What number minus 14 equals 71? What is the answer? 80? Say that again? Not 85. Sorry, it is 85. The talking alcohol confused me. It is 85. Okay, so let's do it now with our opposite operations. We have our equation, n minus 14 equals 71. What is the opposite operation I want to do? Isabel? Yeah. I'm subtracting 14, so I want to add 14. So it's going to 0 out. So I'm left with just n, because negative 14 plus 14 is 0. So what I do to my left side, I want to do to my right side. 1 plus 4 is 5, 7 plus 1 is 8, and I have my answer of 85. And then if we do our fact family, it would be 71 plus 14 equals n. 85 equals n. How are we feeling about this? Okay, let's look at our second page. Now the second page says that we can use our favorite method. we saw that doing the mental math one, it was easy to get the wrong answer. Okay. So be careful if you're going to do the logic. Some of us were doing it wrong, so I want you to be careful. JT, did you have your hand up? Okay, it's stretching. So let's look at this first one. N plus 3 equals 15. I'm going to show you how to do it with the opposite operations because I want us to get really familiar with that. You could look at that and just know by logic what number plus 3 equals 15. Well, I know it's 12, but how do I get that answer of 12 using opposite operations? So if I have plus 3, what's the opposite, Jillian?
Subtracting, so 15 minus 3.
So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides because what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Plus 3 minus 3 is 0, so that leaves me with just n. 15 minus 3 is 12. Okay, so just remember, you're just doing that opposite operation.
Can you use the logic?
You can use the logic, but you want to make sure that you get the correct answer. So you're going to want to check your work. Because it does say use whichever method. Use your favorite method to solve the equations below. So if you use the logic, it's fine, but check your work. Make sure the answer you have works in your problem. So I would go back and say 12 plus 3 equals 15. Oh, it does. So I know I did it correctly. But remember back on the other page, when we were doing it, people were getting different answers, and I'm like, oh, that mental math can be tricky. You can make simple mistakes. So I want you to put your answer in for n and make sure that it is a true, correct equation. Then we have, so I do want you to put your variable answer in to solve it. Then on the bottom it says using addition and subtraction each once, write 2 equations, so 4 equations total with a variable value of 5. So you're going to have one that's adding and one that's subtracting from the same fact family. And then a second one. But our variable needs to be 5, not the answer. So one that I came up with would be n plus 7 equals 12. Because if I put my variable to be 5, my n now equals 5. 5 plus 7 equals 12. How could I write that as a subtraction? Isabel?
12 minus 7.
So when we use variables, we don't want our variable to be at the end. We want to make it in the equation. So I would do 12 minus n equals 7, right? So you can do the same equation, just the different fact family, same numbers, just switch it around. One needs to be adding, one needs to be subtracting. So that's one set of adding and subtracting. You need to come up with your own set. So you can write down the one that we did right now in class. Then you need to come up with your own set with an adding and a subtracting. The variable, your n, has to equal 5. So when it says the variable is 5, it's not the answer to your equation is 5, it's your variable is 5. Any questions on today's math? All right, for my friends at home, we hope you are well, and we hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.